Hi, everybody. Dave Dilling from Markzware here. Today, we're going to give one of our customers a call, Bill Kocher. And Bill is a QuarkXPress user who's switching to Affinity Publisher for various reasons. And we'll get into his QuarkXPress days and why he's going to Affinity Publisher and his background, which is very interesting. So let's give Bill a call now on the Skype here.
Hi.
Hey, there we go. Hey, how you doing, Bill?
Okay, yeah.
All right, well, Bill, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Here, like I said, Bill is using our QXPMarkz, which is the replacement for Q to ID, our Quark to InDesign converter. And one of the beauties with QXPMarkz, it does a lot more than just Quark to InDesign. It's also taking Quark to Affinity Publisher, for instance. And that's what got Bill interested. And this is your webpage, Bill, newhavenpublishing.co.uk?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And this is the book. We'll show you it in a second, at least a preview of it through our QXPMarkz. We're going to convert it. But you can see here more information on Bill's webpage, newhavenpublishing.co.uk, and the book they have published. But let me get back to Skype here. But before we jump into that and hear what you're doing nowadays, maybe give us a bit more background on your history, because it's very interesting.
Yes, I'm quite old. So I started off at London College Printing in London, and left the college, with kind of a diploma in art design in 1970. So
wow,
how long I've been going for. And
it's awesome.
And then worked in various advertising agencies. It was one of those things, I don't know if it's changed now, but you work somewhere for 2 or 3 years at the most. If you didn't get another job, people said, why are you still there? And so some people stayed. Some of my friends did actually end up with a job and stayed there for 10, 15, and ended up with a good pension. I didn't. I kind of followed this. But there was a strange atmosphere that, we can't be any good because he's still there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I learned lots of different things, and it was design and typography, whatever.
Right.
And sometimes working in studios. Knowing I was going to talk to you, I did a bit of research, and I found there's some good stuff out there on the net. If anybody wants to find out what working was like then,
yeah,
it was very physical. Everything was analog, and I think you look at it and think, wow, in fact, I reminded myself that my very first job was on Good Housekeeping.
Oh, yeah.
Like a summer filling. And one of the first things they did was give me this copy and said, right, it's a whole page, there you go. And of course, you worked out how this was going to fit a page. Mathematically, you told the typesetter 10 on 12, whatever, in the set font. And then because it went away, and the next day it came back, on a sheet of film. Not film, but paper, it's actually, they set it.
Right.
Didn't have it in-house. And of course the art director said, I think you better look at this again, because it was like, instead of the 1 page, it was about 2.5. So I could completely wrong. And you can't sit there like in Quark or any other program and go, I think that should be 11 point. Oh, it fits. It was, it was this crazy nonsense. And the people making money were the Motorbike Messengers. I mean, that's what you had. I mean, these days, you've got guys on this scooter with Deliveroo on the back.
Yeah.
Those days, they were proper motorbike guys in leathers and crash helmets. And they rushed around from agency to studio to typesetters to printers to whatever. And, that's how it worked. It was all physical.
Wow.
Sticking stuff, whatever. So the coming of the digital age was, what can I say, a relief all round. But I then got into the technical side, the IT side.
You grew with the...
and then started using and getting places I worked for to at least typeset ourselves,
right.
And I think in previous comments I mentioned, I used a thing called 3D2. I have no idea if it's still going.
Right. Yeah. I think it's Arbortext or
and then moved to Quark.
Yeah.
I never went down to start with the Mac. What's it called? Adobe PageMaker. I didn't start there. I kind of started from the PC end,
right,
and then ended up in the sort of Mac. But I was a Mac PC person. That sounds strange.
Well, it's probably a good thing. A good, how do you call it? Yeah, you were a good like bridge between two worlds. You know?
Yeah, and of course, I remember the Mac PC. None of the files never were. That didn't match that one, and you couldn't play.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was nightmare fonts and stuff, and that slowly got changed, especially once Mac went to Intel.
Well, that was one of the things. The last interview I did with Kevin Slimp, he actually helped Adobe. Let's say, get PDF really on the map and get it really working for the printing side, publishing side.
Yeah.
Because the PDF, the whole idea was because this Mac window you couldn't view easily files from a Mac or a PC. You need PDF was a godsend really.
Yeah.
And
I think it was brilliant.
yeah. But okay, back for a moment because one thing you mentioned, which we overlook so much. I mean, I complain now if I get a colleague says, "Oh, you need to change the color," or try italic text. Okay, I got to open the file and I got to change it. Well, it's nothing. You're saying if you wanted slanted text, you had to get a special company. And
I was trying to remember the name of it, but they actually, well, obviously there were fonts, and even when they started as photo setting, but photo setting meant they had it was an actual sheet, I think, with all the letters on, and a laser went through these images onto the paper. It wasn't done by computer. It was done physically. So, and obviously you'd have an italic version and whatever. But if you did a headline and you wanted to distort it or anything, even slant it, make it, especially if you wanted a bit of a perspective to it. Yeah, there was these companies that, I must admit I never saw them doing it, but I think they actually did it on like a camera where they could physically create it.
Right.
And there were no computers involved whatsoever in any of this. It was all physical.
Yeah.
And of course, it cost a fortune. And I remember, I think, one line of text was £100. We're talking in the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Big. Spent about £500 to do one headline.
Incredible.
Just because the client wanted it.
And then you're telling me if there was a problem with the artwork, you had to actually cut it out and paste in literally the replacement text.
Exactly. And I've actually pasted in full stops. I mean, and you've got the stuff called cowgum, it's called. It was based on petroleum. So you had all this smell. I mean, I found a thing on the net. I want to send you the link.
Yeah, please do. I'll share it on the description.
And this guy's talking about all this stuff we used. It mostly was rotting out front, so we used it.
Sniffing the glue, right?
Do not breathe in. And you've got it open on your desk. You haven't got any choice. Anyway, yes, you physically. It was all artwork. If you can imagine a sheet of photographic paper with the text on.
Yeah.
And then you pasted it on Pasteup Boards with this glue, because it was a thing about cowgum. It didn't set, you could peel it off again. And then,
okay, right, yeah.
But yes, you had to physically change things, and then once again get it on a motorbike and get it sent halfway across London for somebody to see. You couldn't do what you do now, and that's send a PDF file to the client who says, "Yeah, that looks all right. Go ahead."
Oh, and then you were telling me, Bill, that after you sent it on that courier, after you fixed it and cut it and pasted it, you would pray that the pasted on elements.
Yeah, I mean they
could fall off.
It could actually fall off. I mean, it had to go to someone, usually the client. Then it had to be shipped to the printer. They were all handling it. I mean, the classic case of artwork. The work guy, they have account executives with the people who ran them. And this boss that I had, he said we were doing stuff for Philips in at Newhaven. And he said he got to the plane and the account executive turned out and said, "Where's the artwork?" And he had all these bits of photographic paper, and everybody paste them down. He said, "What the am I meant to do with this?" So it was a crazy time. That's all I can say.
Wow.
I wouldn't want to go back to it.
Okay, well, yeah, I got a question on that in a moment, but what are some of the advertising agencies you worked at?
I worked for Ogilvy and Mather.
Oh, wow.
Dorland, Waises. Ogilvy and Mather was all 6 months, but
Hey.
not because I got chucked out. They would have all these apprentices, and then it was like a factory. It was like, is this going to be creative? I think it won't. And I think we all left.
Yeah.
Whereas other places were more inventive.
Right. He's more the design. Now you went to the London School of Print. Is that what you?
Well, it's the London College of Print.
The College of Print,
which is now part of the London College of Communication something or other. They combine several similar types of colleges, mainly on the south bank of the Thames. So,
right.
As I say, I get stuff from occasionally.
So you went there back in the late 60s.
66 to 70, I was there.
Wow, amazing! And so you had designers and printers at one school, actually.
Yeah. There was my friends and I doing this diploma in art and design. There was a typography course, I think, and looking up the alumni of the college and what made me do that. There's lots of very well-known people who they learned print, running journalism. There's a woman called Louise Minchin who's on BBC Breakfast. She did it there. Rebecca Brooks, the well-known Rupert Murdoch running the news of the world lady.
Yeah.
He'd been, So there were
wow.
people doing typography and stuff, and then there were people on the sort of print management. And then there was a photography department as well. That was really good. There was people who went there to do photography. Though I think most of the photographers said the trouble is it's not so much a photographic course as an optical chemist. It's kind of more from the chemicals rather than creativity.
Right, with a technical,
Yeah, more from teaching them all that side.
Right. So how did the printers and the designers get along? I mean, there's always been all through the years the designer and the printer have their differences. Let's say,
Yeah. Well, we were always told that never the twain will meet, but you got this understanding that if you wanted to do a job, and one of the classic things was we had an exhibition when we got to our diploma, and somebody just would design a poster, and somebody would do a catalogue or whatever we did. And you had to start doing this about a year before because it had to go and be typeset by the apprentice typesetter so they could learn to do it. And then the apprentice printer and whatever. And they said, well, this has all got to be part of the class. I mean, we couldn't touch it. No, the whole place would close down and stop. Those were the. I mean, it was pretty crazy. I mean, I'm not against unions, but the print unions were, a bit special. But no, so I mean, obviously that was fair enough that the other people could do it. And of course, they would say, what's this from a student? With about 10 different fonts on it and all this stuff. It's like, well, this guy put it in the relative.
Okay, very interesting, Bill. So obviously a very interesting background. So at a certain point, the internet comes along, obviously. What was your view on the internet? I mean...
Well, obviously, there was the sort of, doing before the internet, really, because we were starting to do stuff as electronically, and as all this stuff came in, and we were still having to do stuff and send it off to clients, etc. So we've moved on from having to draw up layouts. One might still do that to show a client roughly.
Right.
The one was of magic markers.
Yeah.
And pens and stuff like this. So he could say, yeah, that's okay. And then once we started getting decent software, but we weren't really. It wasn't so much the internet; it was the communication with the internet. We were on dial-up. We weren't on,
That's right.
fiber optics.
Yeah.
Here's a PDF, done. You just couldn't do it.
No.
I mean, you were still having to physically send stuff in the post. You might have done it, printed it out to show your client, but I can't remember when all that switched over, but that was the problem.
It wasn't so long ago, really. Yeah.
I mean, what's his name? The English guy who came up with the World Wide Web, all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Berners-Lee.
Yeah.
And Tim Berners-Lee. And he, that's a clever idea. But, of course, a lot of that was happening between, I didn't have in the States, but here, between universities.
That's right, yeah.
They had a thing called Jane or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so they could share documents. And so there was a lot of that going on. And then, of course, the military and other people.
Well, yeah. That's,
yeah. But I can't remember, once we, well, actually, I talked about this other thing. I mean, there was other stuff I used, and this was a catalog. This was a catalog. This is the Pro Audio.
Oh yeah.
This was all done in Quark.
Wow. And what was that done? What year was that about? Do you think?
Well, it's 88, 89 was the catalogue, so it was done in 88. So we're going back a bit, and I said I'd look for some old Quark files, but sadly, remember with all this stuff, we're talking 10, 15 years ago, I threw them away. I was going to work on it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'd be able to open them anyway, because we might be talking Quark 2 or 3 or.
Oh yeah, okay. So you started with like Quark, the very beginning of Quark.
Yeah, well, yeah, fairly. It wasn't the first one, but I mean, it was the files for the memoir are 8, Quark 8,
right?
But I remember I thought it was Quark 7, but no, I did have ones that previous Quark 7, but then we must have had 5 or 6 or one of the earlier ones.
Yeah, and of course you had version 4.
PC as well, yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing with this was that a lot of these jobs, I would lay the pages out, do the text, and then put little images in place so that the printer could cut the proper scans in on the film. They weren't placed. Those pictures were not put in place.
Yeah.
That was down to the printer's job. That was what they,
the Repro
companies, the Repro companies, that's it.
Yeah.
The guys who, they made up all the films and then made plates, and then they went off to the printers.
Right. Well, that was back in the day. I mean, I got out the old box. That was our huge customer base was the Repro houses.
Right.
Because they'd have to deal with all the files coming in.
Right. Yeah.
Have you heard of FlightCheck?
Yes, I do remember. We used FlightCheck. Was that for Quark or just for?
Oh, it was for Quark as well. Yeah, it's a standalone application. It's still around. That will check Quark, InDesign, PDFs, you name it. So it was a real lifesaver for these Repro houses to check what was coming in from designers to see if all the fonts were there, all the images that were linked, were they there? And they would add in scans or whatever they had to do or prepare it.
Because Quark did do something similar, didn't it? I mean,
eventually, yeah. Quark took our initiatives, which is logical. Quality assurance is logical. As did Adobe at a certain point. Within the application, you can check for certain things, resolution and stuff, and
pre-flight or something.
Pre-flight, exactly. Yeah, pre-flight. They
would say this picture's missing.
Yeah. And one of the first products that Markzware made was Mark's Tools, which would actually take Patrick Marchese, who was also a typesetter and what have you, was also at an advertising agency, and he convinced them to go digital on the first ad for Mazda or whatever. But he used a beta version of Quark. And then when it came time to output it, like a couple weeks later, he had to use it in the shipping version of Quark, because that's what the printer had, or the Repro. I don't know how they did it. But in any event, it wouldn't open in a lower version of Quark from the beta.
Yeah.
And that was the first product, was Mark's Tools, which Pat, with his partner Ron Crandall, they created a tool to downsave Quark files, and that was the beginning of Markzware, actually, of one of the reasons Markzware started. So, okay, now on to the Markzware side a bit more. So, where did you do you remember the first time you heard of Markzware? I mean, was it Quark days or the FlightCheck or an extension XT?
Well, I do remember, now you're saying it, yes. When I did the search for converting Quark files, that's all I put in, and your thing came up. And I did think, this sounds familiar. Do you know what I mean? I hadn't bought anything before, but I do remember there were it was like an extension.
Right.
Allowed to do things. Anyway, you know, there used to be catalogues of stuff you could add with Quark, and one of them. In fact, it may be the typesetting place I used. They were all Mac and Quark, and I remember they had other stuff. Maybe that.
Yeah.
They did all that sort of stuff as well. So
right. Right.
But no, I looked at it and it sounded what I wanted to do. And,
okay, cool. All right, so before we jump into more deeply into Markzware, actually, maybe you could tell us a bit about the publishing company and the book, and how we got to this stage where you're trying to get the Quark book to something else, you know.
Right. Yes, and it's this book that my wife produced. And what it is, it's her father's memoir of his time in the Indian Army. This often confuses people. You know, there were two things in India, because it was part of our empire that we no longer have. Good. And there was the British Army in India, and there was the Indian Army, which had British officers with Indian troops. And they would be a mixture of whatever, which meant that my father-in-law had to speak Hindustani, not speak language.
Wow.
So, but to him it was a boy's own adventure, really. And I'm sure today people know about the Khyber Pass and Afghanistan, but he was on that border.
Wow.
What is now Pakistan now. And it was dangerous then. It's just as bad today. I mean, you know, they got shot at, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, my wife said, why don't you write, you know, what were the stuff you say? And in the end, he did write by hand in notebooks. And if anyone looks on the site, we talk about that. Pages and pages on foolscap notebooks. And then when he died in 96, and then my wife just wasn't ready to do anything with it, and it took about 10, 12 years before we got it transcribed, which was quite a job, because we had this sort of backward slaving,
slanted
handwriting's right. Yeah. So, and it had to be checked, and then we had to check especially place names, because he wrote places that were in Pakistan, India, whatever. So she just edited it, really, and it's such a brilliant story. We thought, we've got to get this out.
Right.
But then, of course, it came to me as the designer. She's good at writing, she writes blogs, all the rest of it. The words are her thing. Mine is obviously the design skills. So I had Quark at the time. I couldn't imagine how you do a book any other way when we did this.
Sure.
I mean, those final files are 2010, so I was working on it 2008, 2009. So. And what I used, and one thing I noticed, because we've got these separate, each chapter I did separately, and then of course you set up this other Quark file that could put them all together in the book. You know,
right.
You didn't have to work with 250 pages as one file,
right,
which was ridiculous. And then obviously we sorted out photographs, and then there were maps.
Yeah.
Now, because of copyright reasons, I did them all in. I did them in Illustrator.
Yeah.
I just redid.
Yeah,
maps.
Just get an idea.
Most maps never showed what you want anyway, because often I was showing, you know, where he's platoon and up the river, something. So I had to gather all that stuff together, and then produce it. And I think I mentioned to you, we put it all together as a book and then showed it to an editor, to somebody a bit more skilled than us, who said, get rid of this. My wife had put these quite long introductions. I mean, she did international relations at Brighton and Clark Uni. And so she was quite into this that sort of subject. But this lady said, that's got nothing to do with your father's story. Take it out. That's another book.
Yeah.
So, although she wrote an introduction, we then left it his voice. And yes, it produced this sort of 200, 300-page book.
Wow.
Which is quite a good read. I mean, strange enough, it's no big top seller, but my wife mentioned it in her blog. It's got 3 orders.
Oh, wow.
People have come out saying, oh, yeah, my father was out there in India before the war and this stuff. That's interesting stuff. I'm trying to show people your webpage, but I can't get my picture out of the way. Ugh. Let's see, maybe I got to click on the desktop first. Oh, man. Technology. Yeah, it's great when it works.
Yeah. Anyway, you can see that webpage here, Newhaven Publishing, and then you can see all about the book and where you can order it. And just the life of John Hislop, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And they got reviews over here.
Yeah, some good reviews from, from Sandhurst and from the Army Museum.
Yeah, National Army Museum. Wow, yeah. Yeah, I could imagine for them it's also interesting to have this documented. But in any event, I'll put a link to the webpage down below. And really neat. Get back to Skype here. Really neat, Bill. Thanks for sharing that. And okay, so now you have your book, and it's in Quark. And what prompted you now to look for this option to get to Affinity?
Well, it was once I'm constantly sort of tidying things up, and then this business of I hadn't got Quark, and I'm not using Quark, but I'd started this journey with Affinity. I started with Photo, and did Photoshop, and then when they brought this out, well, that was interesting. I downloaded Beats or whatever it was they had, and now when they got to this stage, I was just thinking I'd love to have this in case we ever want to do anything else with it.
Yeah.
In a program I want to use. Yes, I can remember Quark, but there's the cost of getting the latest version of Quark, which I didn't really want to do. I want to. And then when I found your program, I thought, well, this could be the answer. If I can turn these files into something that is going to happen now, that I can. I mean, as publishers Affinity Publishers only just really come out.
Right.
It's obviously going to be around. I know Quark might be as well, but and what I like about Affinity is these kind of free updates anyway. One of the problems with Quark and Adobe was in the old days they would update the program every year, and usually bring in stuff, and then want to charge you virtually the same price.
Yeah.
For the update. And I remember that it brought back to me the chap who ran this company, did all that typesetting in Brighton. And he said, he's always moaning about Quark. He said, they want me to pay all this money for an upgrade, and I've got to pay for every machine. Yeah. He said, that's £1,500 every, just to keep them happy. So, and that's why I think Affinity have been sensible. But then they come from Serif, don't they? Serif had all these programs that were kind of free.
Right.
Now they've gone down the professional route.
Yeah.
I find Photo good.
Yeah.
It's easy as good as Photoshop. All the stuff I ever used it for. So it's not.
Yeah.
And Publisher looks interesting. And I think I said to you, I'm doing a family history.
Yeah.
Which I started playing around with on Apple just in pages, but I've decided to learn more about Publisher by doing that in there.
Wow!
Because it's more flexible and set styles up.
Oh yeah.
So it's not useful.
Yeah, Affinity's quite powerful. Yeah, there's a little bit of a learning curve, like we discussed before, for some people, and for some things, like I couldn't find drop shadow for the life of me, and then I did a YouTube and
I couldn't find. Well, I got confused with some of the buttons and using it much, and trying to set text style. And then I put the text style, and then it was still in Helvetica. And then I realised there was a character setting stuff on.
Yeah.
Once I put no style in the character setting, it all went into what I wanted it to do. Yeah, I don't mind learning curves, because one thing as you get older is you need to keep the brain active, and I keep it active by learning bits of software.
Yeah.
I think I don't do crosswords, but I think learning another bit of software is quite good.
Yeah.
If I'm to make use of it, obviously.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, well, you're really sharp, Bill. I don't even want to ask how old you are, because you don't seem old at all to me. It's really cool. So,
Well, I'm 72, and in March I'll be 73.
Okay, well, that's not that old, but it's not young anymore. That's true too.
Absolutely. And of course, we've spent since last March at home. Really, that's the downside of the current situation.
Yeah.
And we're back stuck indoors again. I mean, I've got so much to do. Which is why I'm glad I do what I do.
Yeah.
My wife she's writing a blog every week, and I'm playing around with stuff, designing things still.
Yeah.
I did say to a guy once, I was buying a big picture, in fact it's in front of me on the wall, graphic piece of art. And I said, I'm a retired graphic designer. And he said, graphic designers don't retire, do they? I said, no, I suppose you're right.
Yeah.
You're always thinking of something. You're always thinking, I can't even do something, that type doesn't look right. Or,
Yeah. And you live in a beautiful place. Brighton is lovely. If you're going to be on lockdown, Brighton would be the place to be, I guess, Yeah, it's real tough, yeah. Okay, so so now Affinity Publisher, and then you said, well, okay, you like Affinity, but you then you look for Markzware, I guess, to get it from Quark to Affinity.
Yeah, I found that with a web search and looked at it, and I can't remember if there was a trial. I think I tried out first of all, yes, and I could see that it did convert it, and that's what's important to me.
Yeah, but how did you like the use? Was it easy to use?
Yes, I mean, it's very easy. I mean, it opens up the thing, and you can see what you're going to get, and it all looks, in a little preview. And then, of course, I wanted Affinity Publisher, but the other output which I do like is that I can go straight to PDF.
Yeah.
And once again, I think we've discussed this, was that sometimes you just want a copy of the Quark file. I don't need work in it, don't need to. And as I said, there's some stuff my daughter's got. I think she said we talked about this. But I like to have a record of what we did. She's never going to do anything with stuff because it's college work or whatever.
Right.
So there's still those things. If this will do it, I'll be interested to see.
Sure, and I'll just show them real quickly here. Here we have Affinity Publisher, and what I'm going to do is actually take Bill's test file, which I have right here, and if we drop, let me get this Skype out of the way here for a second. If we drop the book on QXPMarkz, what you get is this preview, and that's the free part. This is free for the entire product, which Bill mentioned. So it acts like a demo indeed. You can see, hey, it previews my file. That's a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get a little file info. You see it's 2018. That's because Bill had downloaded Quark 2018 demo, and I think, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you see all your fonts and colors used and images and how many text stories, etc. And you see here, you just get a nice preview of the entire file. You see here some it's like some tables, and here's some of the maps Bill was talking about. There's some pictures here. You see traveling through the Suez Canal. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It was a journey just to get there back in the day.
Absolutely. No flying.
Yeah. There's Northwest Frontier Province, Afghanistan. Wow. He was right on the And there's just a, really interesting. You get the full book, and then what you do, you can just export to various formats. Like Bill was saying, you choose PDF if you just want to share the book quickly with his daughter or whoever. It's not as good as exporting PDF from the native application, because there you have more control over the, high resolution and all that. But you can go to IDML, you can export to image types, and over here you can just say, well, I just want to go right into Affinity Publisher, and you can click Open in Affinity Publisher, and now you'll see popping up here. Let's see, where do I have to go? Here it comes. Close this window. See it in the background opening up, and here's that same file now right in Affinity Publisher. So you see all the pictures came over nice and crisp. You see all the maps came over. You see all the text. And you see that the linked text, the text boxes are linked. So the text is actually linked together. So it's one big story, one big book, like it should be. So very, very interesting. And it's a great way to get from Quark to Affinity Publisher for those interested to do that. Now, in your case, I guess it's more like, get Bill back on the screen here. I guess it's more like, it's like an archiving thing. You just want to have it available if need be in this Affinity Publisher.
Yeah. I think, yes, it's another story, but I mean, the trouble with all the stuff we've got, we're going to lose lots of things, I think. You end up with stuff in old bits of software that then, Quark's not gone, but once again, the story my wife told me when she was at university, I can't remember why they did it, they're very good at Sussex University with AI and stuff about technology. And she had this lecture where the guy showed them the unscrolled parchment that was from 500 AD.
Wow.
And he was making points saying, we can see this, and that we can study it, and we can look at what they did, And he said the late 20th century and the 21st century is going to be a black hole, because everything's electronic. And if this stuff's lost, and the classic case of that was the BBC did a thing for the Millennium called the Millennium Project, and they put it all on 12-inch laserdiscs, just as laserdisc disappeared. Now they have worked on it and put it on the website, great. But the thing is, I've got stuff here. I've got cinefilm. I've got most of it's all been digitized, but being able to convert like Quark to something else, because I don't particularly want to learn all this other software. Yes, it is so that it's in a format I can give them to my daughter. I don't know, we don't know what they do with that stuff. Could jump a whole lot later on, but at least, if you like, our children and grandchildren have got this fantastic history of one of their relatives.
Right, and who knows, they want to take it further. And like you said, once a designer, always a designer. Once a DTP layout artist, always a DTP layout artist. And there's many people in your boat, QuarkXPress users, that are retiring or winding down and want to, but still want to, or still have to stay busy with desktop publishing. And this is an option, and that's why I was glad we got to interview you, because there's many people in the same boat as you. So,
and I think, and to be honest, the reason why I went down the Affinity route was because I'm on a pension. I can't afford Quark and Adobe's sort of. Fine, if you're running a business, great,
right.
But I'm not.
Exactly.
Affinity came up with, and as I said, they would come out with this and say, by the way, at the moment, it's only £35. So I'll buy that. Like Publisher, what is it? It's only 50. It's not a lot of money.
No, it's very affordable, even for the whole suite. It's extremely affordable, and you have a viable replacement for Adobe InDesign, Photoshop and Illustrator. So and QuarkXPress.
I've got the Illustrator one as well, but I've not played with it.
Yeah.
It was offered, and I thought, let's have it. Because in case I want to take one of these maps, which is done in Illustrator, and then I want to change it or tweak it or something.
Oh, I love Illustrator. But, we use Creative Cloud use it daily in and out, of course. So we're making money off of that. What is it, €49 per month subscription? But if you're on a pension, it's just you don't need to pay that. You know,
you're not doing any work like here. I just want this in format in a program that's one, I want to use, and two, and it's part of that suite, which is good because you can flip between photo and whatever the other one's called, the design or whatever. And
how easy was it to get? Was the ordering process easy to buy the product QXPMarkz?
Oh, that was easy enough. Yeah, and we had a chat about that. That was another thing. You were really helpful. I have to say, because sometimes I've said, this is what I'm doing with it, and you gave me I've got a little discount for doing this really, and that's why it was. So thank you for your help. It's been interesting talking, and it's revived a lot of memories because I've been thinking about what we did and stuff like that. And as I said, trying to remember.
Well, that's really why I like doing the interviews, because other people, particularly younger people, they get to hear what it was like, and some of the things we take for granted, even I take for granted, are just amazing to hear again, and really, really appreciate that. And the last question then, Bill, I know you're still, it's hard to say you're not using it like every day, but would you recommend QXPMarkz for other potential users?
Well, if anyone else has got the same kind of problem I had, which is a job that's all in Quark, and you don't want, because what's the point of upgrading Quark if you're not going to use it?
Right.
And in the process of what I was doing, I ended up going online on one of these chat things and saying, this is what I'm doing. And all they could say is, well, you could use this and get 5% off at 200 and something quid. And I said, just to get Quark, what's good about your one? I don't use it in design, but, if you use Quark and you've been designing, that gives you two routes, doesn't it? Then, of course, it allows you to open these files the same PDFs.
Right.
And I'm sure Quark, but you can do.
Yeah.
It's proprietary software. There's always a problem.
Yeah.
With lots of things, and so anything that gets you between those.
Yeah, but just a note for people with a lot of Quark files, this preview, which I'm now showing on top of Bill on the screen, this preview alone is amazing because you can now go in and actually scroll through your document and see what it is. Even read. You can read it. This is a reader. You could read. So it's
you might just want to find out what that file was.
Yeah.
And think, I don't need that anymore.
Right.
And so, yes, I have a couple of my daughter's partner's stuff he'd done, and they were just posters or something he'd done. But of course, it doesn't. In a file name, you never write.
Yeah.
You can write a lot of text, but you don't. And and of course, a lot of, especially Quark files. Well, on my Mac anyway, it never shows a header.
No.
Like you can see, most things can't be PDF and stuff, and if you go to things, it often shows you not just the logo. I know Quark's it's always a problem. It never showed you what the file was.
Right.
You could open that Quark,
right,
and then open up and then it might show you.
Right.
But no, that is quite good. At least you could knock out some PDFs of everything if you just do it for the record. Just
to have it as a hard copy digitally, of course, is So, but Bill, thank you so very much for your time.
Okay, thank you for your help. It's it's been interesting to. One of the things actually is interesting working on these files. Thinking, I must read this book again.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Nearly 10 years ago, and
relived
a lot of it. So.
Oh, and one mention, we gave Bill a little discount as a pension, someone on the pension. If you're retired on a pension, I don't know how you prove it, just have to take your word, but just send us an email on sales@markzware.com and we'll get you a pension year's discount, So anyway, Bill, thanks again. I'll put a link to your book down below. And if you could send me that link on how it was back in the day,
Yeah. I'll send you those links. And there was a couple I found. One was a guy actually talking about doing page layout.
Yeah.
And the other one was it was just a story, but not, where somebody was talking about all these things we did and how dangerous it was. And there's even a cover of something, a scalpel and nerve and blood. I'll send you the links. You'll see what you think of it.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Bill. Well, thanks again, and let's pray we get through this whole pandemic real quick here, and I wish you all the best.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right. Okay, take care.
Okay.
Just think of all the tasks that make your time bleed. Our conversion tools are what you really need. It's a fast-moving world, got to keep on the top. With a little help from us, your work will never have to stop.